Have you ever felt that life keeps smacking you in the face constantly? It seems like life will never hold up and it will never cease. This life analogy was similar for farmers because the country was in the middle of the Great Depression and then farmers had to deal with the Dust Bowl. The Great Depression hurt farmers because their livelihood relied on selling crops year in and year out. During the economic boom of the 1920s, people had money to buy consumer goods like refrigerators, which could preserve food. When the Great Depression hit, though, people had to sell their consumer goods back, which lowered the demand for food because food could not be preserved as long and saved for later days. The lower demand for food meant that prices for food would reduce and farmers would be losing money, especially when they had bought their own consumer goods, such as tractors, to meet with the original demand for food. As a response to the lower prices, farmers tried to make even more food to sell on the market, not knowing that the increased supply of food would lower the price of food even further due to the increased supply and less demand. The graph shows that the price will go down. The Dust Bowl was an extra beatdown that had some farmers leave while others stayed, hoping for better times ahead. What is the Dust Bowl, though? The Dust Bowl was a series of dust storms that occurred due to a severe drought and an increase in dryland farming techniques, which increased soil erodibility. Farmers had used topsoil on their crops, which dried out with the drought. Since the crops were not growing due to the drought, the topsoil that farmers placed on their crops dried out and was easily blown away by the wind. This led to dust storms that stretched across the country for miles. A New York journalist, George Greenfield, traveled by train through 200 miles of what he called a man-made fog. He blamed the farmers for the dust storms because he believed the land, and I quote, was raped by greed for $2 wheat. This highly insensitive statement was in the New York Times in 1937 after two of the dust storms had hit earlier a few years ago. What was the actual price of wheat in 1937 for a bushel when Greenfield wrote his article? 96 cents a bushel. When did farmers last sell their wheat at $2 a bushel or more? 1920, 17 years ago, at 296 a bushel. Farmers had wasted the land due to greedy farmers, and their short-sightedness alone contributed to the Dust Bowl, according to Greenfield. So here we have farmers who have decided that they would spend their one life on this very earth planning enough food so that other people can pursue other career choices like Greenfield in his journalism career. And farmers have to read about how they are the cause of the dust storm due to their greed, and when environmental factors, for which farmers have no control, also contributed to these dust storms. What did the dust do to the people? Greenfield noted that two trainmen had died of dust pneumonia, where the dust affected their lungs so badly that their lungs were not able to function properly. We must assume that the farmers and their families also lost considerable lung function due to the dust, just like the trainmen. So what though? Dust, hair, dead skin skulls surround us every day. Perhaps the magnitude of the storm would be best described by Leroy Hinkle, a farmer who had lived during the storm. But the sky in the west, as far as you, just a black cloud. That's the way it looked. But it was all dirt, and that's all we got out of it. We got all dirt. Dave Frazier had his truck sitting out in front of the store there, and it even blew that about 30 to 40 feet, just right down the street. So here's the situation to quickly recap. An environmental disaster, coupled with dire economic needs, leads to multiple storms throughout the Midwest that eventually would have all that dust carry over to large industrial cities like Buffalo, Washington, and New York City.